The Trill mocked humans as primitive apes, until a human merc with nothing to lose saved their scaly asses. Wayne Reyes hauled on the flight stick, his battered starfighter weaving through the dense traffic of the Trill spaceport. A grizzled, muscular merc at 45, Wayne had seen his share of firefights and double crosses across the galaxy, but stiffing him on a job, then sicking security on him. That slimy Trill crime lord just made the biggest mistake of his soon-to-be very short life. Spotting his remote landing pad in the seedy port underbelly, Wayne set the ship down hard. He popped the canopy and hopped out, hissing as an ache lanced through his recently broken ribs. Sucking wind, he limped towards the pad's lone occupant, Linux, an 8-foot reptilian Trill, the closest thing Wayne had to a friend on this festering shithole of a planet. Linux rumbled deep in his throat. "Any luck contacting your human fleet?" Wayne spat blood on the decking and shook his head. "Fleet scattered to the galactic winds. We're on our own out here." Shit. The translator couldn't fully capture the guttural snarl of Linux's native curse. "My people could fight Krell if only they had the quad. Instead we let that warlord bleed our planet dry and work us to death." "Can't help you there, buddy. Humans don't intervene in alien affairs anymore, not since the Council gave us the boot." Linux's craggy features twisted in anger as he recalled the story every Trill hatchling learned. When the marauding Krell invaded Trill space, the mighty Council races had just laughed, leaving the primitive Trill to fend for themselves. All but the humans. They alone fought and died alongside the Trill in those dark days. Fat lot of good it did either of them. Wayne grabbed Linux's muscled arm. "Don't you see what Krell's doing to your people? He's mining all your Benetite to fuel his war machine, wrecking your planet, enslaving your—" A concussive boom split the air, an instant before a plasma blast reduced a nearby fuel barrel to glowing slag. "Krell's assassins!" Linux roared, spotting the descending Trill gunship an instant before its cannons fired again. "Wayne, get down!" Plasma bolts rained down on the platform, blistering the metal as Wayne and Linux hurled themselves behind a pile of discarded hover crates. The missiles locked onto his starfighter with a steady beep. "No!" Wayne launched himself out from cover, feet pounding on the decking as he raced for his ship. The missiles streaked towards the battered hull. His fingers scrabbled at his belt, ripping free the detonator. He smashed the trigger. The fighter erupted into a plume of flame an instant before the missiles struck. The shock wave slammed into Wayne, hurling him back. Fire engulfed the gunship's nose, the craft pinwheeling into the spaceport with a thunderous boom. Linux hauled Wayne upright amidst the flaming wreckage. "Gods, Wayne, you could have been killed. Why did you do that?" Wayne coughed out smoke. "Better that then let Krell have it." "But how will you get off-world now?" "I won't. My ride's toast." Wayne staggered to his feet. "We need to move. Krell's goons will swarm this place any minute. I need a place to lay low and plan my next move." Linux nodded. "I know a place in the swamps outside the city, an old hunting cabin my sire built. Not much, but secure. My skiff's not far." They took off through the spaceport's grimy alleyways, Wayne's hand clenched on his blaster. As they approached the skiff's hiding spot, a gravelly voice sneered. "Well, the infamous Wayne Reyes and his Trill lapdog." Spinning around, they faced a hulking Trill in spiked armor, a crackling neural whip at his hip, Krell's Praetorian Guard. 2 more guards emerged behind them, cutting off escape. The lead guard cracked his whip. "Drop the blaster, human. Our lord has waited a long time to collect your hide." Wayne slowly raised his hands and let the blaster clatter to the ground. "Sorry, Linux," he muttered. "Looks like a change of plans." The guard leveled his own blaster at Wayne's head. "Lord Krell will enjoy peeling the flesh from your bones, ape. And as for this traitorous lizard," he motioned to Linux with his whip, "perhaps the pits of—" The crackling energy whip snapped centimeters from Wayne's boots. "March, scum!" the guard snarled. The neural whips herded Wayne and Linux through the grimy spaceport alleys. An armored transport waited, engines humming. The guard shoved them in, the hatch slamming shut. The transport wove through crumbling streets, past collapsed hovels and Trill beggars in rags. Wayne subtly reached into his boot, fingers closing on a small ceramic blade. He met Linux's eyes and flicked his gaze to the guard's exposed neck. Linux gulped, then gave a tiny nod. Wayne exploded into motion, slamming his shoulder into the guard. The Trill staggered. Wayne lunged, burying the blade in the driver's throat. Linux roared, tackling the third guard. Wayne wrenched the wheel. The transport smashed into a line of decrepit shops and rolled, metal shrieking. Shaken, Wayne and Linux dragged themselves from the twisted wreckage. Bloody Praetorian corpses lay strewn in the debris. "We need to get out of the city now," Wayne growled, "before reinforcements come." They raced down labyrinthine streets on foot, dodging patrols, until they reached the city's crumbling walls. They slipped through a sewage culvert into dense swamplands beyond, the skeletal ruins of swamp-submerged Trill cities jutting from the muck like tombstones, relics of a once great civilization before Krell invaded. Hours later, they reached Linux's hunting cabin, a ramshackle hut on stilts above polluted water. As Linux coaxed the ancient generator to sputtering life, Wayne gazed out at the fetid desolation. "How long since Krell invaded?" he asked. 5 revolutions of our sun," Linux rumbled. "When he first arrived, we fought. But his technology outclassed ours, his soldiers stronger, faster. We begged the council races for aid, but they just laughed. Said we primitive Trill got what we deserved." Wayne's fist clenched. "What about other species in this sector? Anyone else fighting Krell?" Linux shook his massive head. "We were the last free world in the sector. If any still resist, I do not know of them." Sighing, Wayne pulled out a battered holo projector. It displayed a flickering star map. "My human fleetmates are scattered in deep space, running recon." His finger traced a twisting route through uncharted regions. "Best data puts them here, 50 clicks past the Orcs Nebula." Linux's eyes widened. "But that is on the far side of Krell's territory. No way for a transmission to reach them without intercept." A grim smile crossed Wayne's weathered face. "Then I guess we better fire up that old swamp skiff of yours. We've got a hell of a trip ahead of us." The night dragged on, a suffocating blanket of darkness broken only by the eerie flicker of bioluminescent fungi clinging to gnarled mangrove roots. Wayne and Linux took turns on watch, blasters ready, scanning the black swamp for any sign of Krell's patrols. But only the buzz of blood-sucking insects and the distant howls of swamp predators broke the stillness. At first light, they fired up the battered swamp skiff's engine. It coughed and sputtered in protest, belching oily smoke. Wayne swore, slamming his fist against the hull. "Come on, you rusted piece of shit!" Linux took the controls and coaxed the engine to a rattling idle, while Wayne manned the rear-mounted plasma cannon. The skiff lurched forward, its repulsors straining to lift the craft's bulk above the scummy water. Linux angled them out into the bayou, the skiff's prow cutting through dangling vines. For days they pushed deeper into Krell's conquered swamplands. Linux guided the skiff through a treacherous maze of dense mangrove forests, stagnant canals, and yawning sinkholes that could swallow the tiny craft whole. Wayne's hands never left the cannon grips, his eyes ceaselessly scanning the overhanging foliage for the telltale glint of patrol drones. Evidence of Krell's ruthless exploitation of Trill's resources soon blighted the landscape. Vast tracts of swamp had been drained dry and strip-mined down to bedrock, immense machines gouging the precious benitite ore from the muck. Mountains of waste tailings choked stagnant rivers. Forests of fungal polyps lay flattened, crushed under the treads of gargantuan extractors. With fuel and supplies dwindling, they took shelter in the corroded husk of a crashed Trill warship, a relic of Krell's invasion, half submerged in the swamp's fetid embrace. Wayne dropped into the ship's gutted engine compartment, working to siphon dregs of fuel into their tanks. A staccato burst of Linux's plasma rifle sent Wayne scrambling for the hatch, blaster drawn. "Swamp rats," Linux growled, kicking a charred carcass off the deck. "Big ones, Krell's chemicals mutate them." Wayne opened his mouth to reply when a familiar whine froze the words in his throat. A Krell patrol skiff, turbines screaming as it tore across the sky. They've locked onto our ionization trail, Wayne hissed through clenched teeth. Damn it! He slammed the engine hatch and leapt to the controls. Linux pointed a clawed finger at a particularly dense copse of giant mangroves ahead, their trunks swollen with bulbous protrusions. There, the carvu trees. Their spores emit an electromagnetic field. It should hide our energy signature. Wayne gunned the throttle, and the skiff surged forward, its straining repulsors kicking up a plume of swamp muck. He jinked and weaved through the tangle of exposed roots, wincing as a spur of rock scraped the hull with a screech of metal. The patrol craft howled closer, search beams stabbing through the perpetual twilight. Just as the light swept over their position, Wayne killed the engine. The skiff drifted into the concealing foliage, bumping to rest against a tangle of vines. A heartbeat later, the patrol craft thundered overhead, search beams probing the dense canopy. Wayne and Linux barely dared to breathe, shrinking back from the beams of harsh white light. An eternity crawled by before the patrol craft banked away, its frustrated pilot throttling up the engines as it tore off into the gloom. Wayne slumped back against the hull and blew out a ragged breath. Too damn close. Way too damn close. Linux consulted their flickering star chart. The nebula is still many rotations distant, and Krell's eyes grow ever watchful. I fear we may not have enough fuel to reach it. Wayne shoved himself away from the hull, his eyes hard as flint. We'll find a way, we have to. My people are the only chance your world has. His gaze bored into Linux's. I'm not letting that bastard Krell enslave your species, not while I still draw breath. Linux nodded, something fierce and proud kindling in his eyes. This is a fight for the soul of my world, the soul of my people, and by the ancient gods, we will make the invaders bleed for every inch of it. Wayne clasped the Trill's burly forearm. Damn right we will. Now let's see about scrounging more fuel cells. With luck, this old barge has a few stashed away. Together, they slogged back into the bowels of the rotting ship, searching for the precious fuel they needed to continue their desperate mission through the deadly swamps. The swamp skiff streaked out through the thinning atmosphere, repulsors straining as it clawed its way into the void. Wayne and Linux left the noxious swamps of Trill behind, but found the cold vacuum of space no more welcoming. Krell's patrols prowled the system's asteroid belts and shattered moons, hunting for any who dared defy their master's rule. Wayne wove the battered skiff between tumbling boulders and jagged spires of rock, using the floating debris to mask their ion trail. Plasma bolts stitched past the viewport, Linux cursing in his guttural native tongue as he fired back with the jury-rigged rear cannons. For a harrowing week, they played this deadly game, always one step ahead of the hunters, scraping by on dwindling rations and snatched moments of fitful sleep. But finally, blessedly, the multicolored clouds of the Orcs nebula swelled before them, a stellar refuge from their relentless pursuers. We made it, Wayne breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Hope kindled in his chest for the first time in years. Now we just need to transmit the rendezvous coordinates and... A shrill alarm sliced through his words. Linux's eyes widened, fixed on the scanner display. No, it cannot be... A massive silhouette emerged from the nebula's swirling hues, blotting out the stars. A Krell dreadnought, its hull bristling with enough firepower to glass a planet. They were waiting for us. Linux's voice was a hoarse whisper. Wayne's hands flew over the controls, diverting every scrap of power to the straining engines. Hold on! The skiff plunged into the nebula, a glowing exhaust trail marking their passage. An instant later, the dreadnought opened fire. Searing beams of plasma carved through the gas clouds, flash-boiling everything they touched. The skiff jinked and wove, Wayne throwing them into wild corkscrews and dizzying rolls. Anything to throw off the gunner's aim. A near miss sent them tumbling, consoles shorting out in showers of sparks. Linux wrenched at the stick, teeth bared as he fought the controls. The skiff shuddered, coming out of the spin by a hair's breadth. "Shields at 10%, he snarled. "The next hit will finish us." Wayne's grip tightened on the yoke, the dreadnought looming ever larger ahead. Its planet-crushing firepower made a mockery of their tiny ship and its paltry defenses, but he hadn't come this far to die cowering like prey. "We're not done yet," he growled. "When I give the word, overload the engine core." Linux whipped around, eyes wide. "No, but that will—" "I know," Wayne cut him off. "Just be ready." He angled their careening craft towards the dreadnought's heart, aiming for the massive cannon barrel at the center of the ship. Angry red light pulsed deep within the barrel, the magnetic coils straining to contain the building charge. Targeting klaxons wailed, the weapon locking onto them. The nebula gases ignited around the skiff, temperature spiking, the hull groaning under the strain. "Now!" Wayne roared. Linux's fist slammed down on the overload controls. The skiff's overtaxed engines detonated in a blinding flash, an expanding shell of plasma and shrapnel. The shockwave slammed into the dreadnought's cannon barrel an instant before it fired, the blast warping magnetic containment fields already stretched to their limit. Explosions chained through the dreadnought's innards, secondary blasts rippling along its hull. Escape pods blasted free of the doomed ship, tiny sparks fleeing a dying behemoth. The ship's reactor ruptured, a miniature sun blossoming at the heart of the nebula. The skiff, engines dead, tumbled through the maelstrom. The shockwave caught it like a leaf in a hurricane, flinging it clear of the blast radius. Battered, scorched, leaking atmosphere, it spun lazily as the dreadnought disintegrated into a billion glowing fragments. Linux stared at the expanding fireball reflected in his slitted eyes. "What now?" His voice was flat with resignation. "That was our last chance to reach your fleet." Wayne slumped back in his seat, looking every one of his hard-fought years. The weight of their impossible quest crashed down on his shoulders, the burden of a species' survival, the futility of fighting a galaxy intent on grinding humanity beneath its heel. Movement caught his eye, shadows shifting against the fading light of the blast. He squinted, the shadows sharpened, becoming angular silhouettes, hard edges and predatory lines. A cluster of ships, knife-edged and lethal, knifed out of the roiling nebula clouds. Human ships, emblazoned with the emblem of Wayne's fleet. His breath caught. They came. After everything, they still came. "Looks like you could use a tow, Reyes." A familiar voice, thick with amusement, crackled over the hailing frequencies. A rough laugh forced its way up Wayne's throat, more relief than humor. He thumbed the mic. "Fashionably late as always, Captain." He glanced over at Linux, meeting the Trill's disbelieving stare. "We're not in the clear yet, my friend. There's a long fight ahead of us. Krell's still got his claws deep in your world, and prying him loose won't be easy. Might be impossible." Linux swallowed, his inner eyelids flicking closed and open. When he spoke, his voice rasped with a new steel. "Impossible has not stopped us yet, Wayne Reyes. My people will fight, and this time we will not stand alone." One of the human ships latched a docking tube onto the skiff's airlock, the magnetic clamps engaging with a clunk Wayne felt in his bones. As he pushed himself out of the pilot's seat, he activated the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, set course for the Trill homeworld." His words carried the weight of history, the ghosts of every human who had bled on alien soil. "It's time we finish what we started all those years ago." He paused, feeling civilizations balanced on the knife's edge of his next words. "It's time to go to war." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.